Welcome to my Maestro Tech channel. Today we'll be covering the best GPUs to get on the German, UK and the USA market. So please stay tuned because it's going to be a long one. The German market is up first, and today we'll be looking through the pricing, the performance and the pricing compared to the MSRP, and looking at which of the GPUs are best ranked. Let's start off with the left-hand corner. You can see all the new generation of GPUs, the 50 series and the 9000 series from AMD. This is the pricing in euro. The lowest I could find PC Power Picker in Germany. If you somehow find a GPU priced even lower through German channels, right, or stores, feel free to let me know, but you should know that possibly those GPUs could perform even better price to performance or MSRP to performance or price. So this is only used from PC Power Picker, not even eBay or any other site. All right, so let's start off. As we can see on the left hand side, the most expensive one is the 5090. If you have the money, you get it. That's it. Usually that's how the 90 series work with NVIDIA. If you have the money to buy the most expensive one, you buy the most expensive one and you get it done. Next up is the 5080, then 5070 Ti and so forth, right? At the lower end we have the 5050 that came out a couple of months ago. Isn't that good of a GPU, so it is priced quite low. As we will see later on, there might be some upsets of what's the best ranked GPU's price to performance. All right, if you need to look through all the pricing for the German market, feel free to pause the video. I will continue on. So on the right hand side we have the performance chart. It's taken data from Tech PowerUp and used the 5050 as a baseline. We start off there, and then it's the performance compared to the 5050 for each graphics card. As you can see, the 5090 is 421% stronger than the 5050. So that's how it works. It isn't compared to each model. I started off just so you can understand it. The percentage difference it says on the 5060 is 27%, so you understand it. 5060 is 27% faster than 5050. That doesn't mean that the 9060 XT 8GB is going to be 5% faster than the 5060. I think generally it is 2 to 3% faster. So you are aware of the percentages there. How the PTP bar works, it's price to performance. We use the price, and I have the with the performance, and you get a value of how strong it is price to performance. Just quickly looking through the PTP, we can see that the 9060 XT 8GB is probably the best price to performance GPU card, and we can see the 5090 is the worst. But that also doesn't have context included, i.e. Gigabyte 3 RAM and how strong it is performance wise and what the cards are used for, right? So some context needs to be filled in, and I will try to provide that. But just so you're aware of it, when you're just looking at the graph, doesn't mean that 9060 XT 8GB is the best GPU to get, because later on, as I will explain, it isn't. And the last one, the MSRP calculator. This is with taxes and without taxes, so we can look at what the MSRP is for the different GPU and also compare it to the price it's currently selling for. The only metric here really that you want to look at when buying the GPUs is the MSRP with VAT, which is the taxes in EU. So it's that metric we want to look at. The color scheme on the right hand side, we want to see which cards are the greenest, which means they're selling for less than MSRP. Yellow means they are pretty much spot on or just above MSRP, might just be also below just slightly. And the more red it is, it's overpriced. essentially. That's Germany. That's how Germany looks like. There are some cards, as you can see when you pause the video. Some cards are more greener and some are usually yellow or red. So just looking at the MSRP, because that's going to be a big one, and that's what most people should be looking at when they are buying a card, if they're upgrading or buying a new system. The best bang for your buck right now in Germany is the probably 9060 XT or the 5060 Ti, 8 gigabytes, according to the MSRP to price graph I have here. But that also means that you are paying for an 8 gigabyte card, which in today's standards in 2025, it is not optimal. It is usually lower than people recommend, because most games today usually sit around the 10 to 12 gigabyte VRAM mark. If you want to play a maximum settings, even can go up to 16 gigabyte in some games. I know GPUs that have 16 gigabyte or 24 gigabyte or 20 or 20 or 32 games will try to allocate even more VRAM than possibly needed. Just be aware that even though these two cards that are 8 gigabyte are very fairly priced and great deals, technically on the graph, they aren't that good of GPUs to get to play games on. As we can see, the 5060 Ti 8 gigabyte is the same price in Germany as the 9060 XT, the 60 gigabyte version. The 9060 gigabyte 16 gigabyte version is a better card. It has the more VRAM, performs very similarly, and you're paying the same price. The 9060 XT 16 GB VRAM is as well under MSRP currently, so it is just a better deal all around. The closest competitor to that card is the 5060 Ti 60 GB, just in specs and the VRAM capacity, and that card is going for above 100 euros more, which I at this point wouldn't recommend, and I would instead looking at the 5070 Ti 770, not the Ti version, sorry. The 5070 is a much better deal overall. Even though it has a bit less VRAM, it is a much stronger card. The VRAM difference there might not play a big role. Elsewhere, if you're ready to spend a little bit higher, the best GPU probably this generation is looking like the 9070 XT. Currently in Germany, it is selling for the same price as its MSRP. It is probably the best GPU overall. You can play 1440p high resolution, extremely high resolutions, right, and settings. You can play 4K gameplay, ultra or high even in many games. You can ray trace with this card. It has FSR4, which is just slightly worse than DLS4. You have frame gen. It doesn't have the multi-frame gen, but it has a normal frame gen, still strong. And it is 16 gigabyte VRAM, so it is somewhat future-proof if people like that. And it's selling for 600 euros in Germany currently, which is almost 150 euros less than the closest competitor to that card, which is the RTX 5070 Ti. So in my opinion, if you're looking to just get a strong card that's going to play you 1440p or 4K, the best GPU to get is the 9070 XT. Now, if you have the money, want to keep the same ecosystem as Nvidia, right? If you are a fanboy of them, if you do prefer their encoding, rendering, streaming capabilities, the RTX 5070 Ti is probably going to be the best GPU to buy from Nvidia, because you're just getting a strong GPU that's going to do quite well for a few years ahead. And otherwise, I would just say skip the 5080. You aren't getting that much more for like almost 200, 300 more euros. And if you just have unlimited money or ready to spend money, the 5090 is just there for the taking. It is the strongest card right now. It's going to be very strong for many years, and especially that 32 gigabyte VRAM, it is just amazing. All right, so lastly I want to take a look at is the best price to performance chart I have here, and taking a look at how they are ranked, from the first one being the best and the 12th one being the worst. And as we can see, it is a bit of a maybe upset for some people. The 9060 XT 8GB is the best currently, and then it is followed by 3 NVIDIA cards, which are the 5060, 5060 Ti 8GB, and the 5050. Now, when we rank this price to performance, it just is the value here taken from the performance chart, and the lowest is the best. But that doesn't mean a lot when you put into it context, right? Since all of these cards, the 4 best price to performance cards, are an 8GB version, which I would almost render obsolete. You probably shouldn't looking at an 8GB VRAM GPU, especially if you buy a new one. We can see that 9060 XT 16GB is not much worse price to performance than the 5050. So I would be probably looking at that card as the baseline budget mid-range graphics card to buy in this generation. And as I told you before, the 9070 and 9070 XTs, especially the XT version, is probably the best GPU to buy on the market currently. Even though price to performance it is landing in Germany in the mid-range, in the mid-table, I would still say that is the best GPU to buy because it has the whole package. So that is how Germany is looking. On to the UK segment. As we can see on the pricing, it is a bit lower than the German, since the Great British pounds are stronger conversion rate than the euro, but it generally follows the same theme. The 5050 is the lowest and the cheapest one, followed by the 5060, then the 9060 XT, and so forth. So pricing pretty much stays the same as in Germany. We'll be looking at it more in detail with the MSRP later on. Let's first take a look at the performance here. And the big difference is that the 5060 is in UK the best performing card price to performance, right? It is the same story as when I spoke in the German section. 8GB VRAM, right? So you are going to be limited in many games. Forbidden West, I know, loves to have around 10 to 11K VRAM, even more if you can. Indiana Jones, Marvel, the Spider-Man 2 game, Monster Hunter Wilds, all these games, newer games that require ray tracing or just more VRAM, they will hurt the 5060, 5050, 9060 XT 8GB and the 5060 Ti 8GB. So those cards, even though on paper they look great price to performance, they will suffer, especially now and much later on next year and year so. They will need to be sold and upgraded later on, right? Even though you shouldn't be looking at those cards, they can be useful, especially if you maybe only play League, CSGO, some Apex or something like that, competitive, that doesn't require more than 8GB, and you just play on 1080p, low, medium settings. You probably will be looking at these cards because you're getting a cheap card that is strong, will have a lot of FPS in those games, and it's cheap, and you will be fine with it if you're just playing those games. So context matters in these games, but for many heavier and newer titles, you will have problems with these cards. One difference here as well that is that the 9070 XT is a little bit stronger performer than the non-XT version, but you can see the value, it is just one difference, so it is barely anything. Now on to the more interesting part, it's the MSRP calculator, because it is all well to know how price to performance a card is, but the actual price to the MSRP and what the card should be sold for, that's what you should be looking at when you're deciding which card you want to buy, because it is your money you're spending. So here's is the interesting parts here. Looking at it, the 5060 still has the crown in the UK as the best value card here to buy. Its pricing is 16% less than its MSRP. So it is just a great deal overall in that sense. And I can see that this card is appealing to many if you are playing games that don't require VRAM. Closest cards that are priced fairly or less is the 5070 at 9% below its MSRP. So that card is actually a great proposition for the mid-range. Even though it has 12 gigabytes VRAM, it is still fairly strong, and it does blow all the other cards out of the water in performance generally. So that is a card, if you have a little bit extra cash, you should probably take a look at. In my opinion, still, even though it is overpriced currently, it is selling for a little bit more than MSRP. The 9070 XT does still retain the best value because you get the package, 16 GB VRAM, great performance. It does beat the 5070 by like 20%, I believe. In performance, 20-25%, you're looking at much stronger performance, and it is just a great package of a card. It is over its MSRP, which is a bit, yeah, it isn't the best. The non-XT version actually is keeping its MSRP value pretty much, so that could be an option if you don't want to go too high, or just wait for the XT version to go down a bit in price. The 50 Ti is the best Nvidia card still, in my opinion. The same argument as the 9070 XT. The package is great, what it offers. It is the only problem, and that is that it is 150 pounds more, almost 150 pounds more than the XT version, and it isn't a card that's generally worth more than 150 pounds. Ideally, it's hard with Nvidia, it's probably not going to go down so much. If this card goes below its MSRP, it could be decent pickup, and probably if you're looking at staying in the Nvidia lane, if you're just looking at the system, you know, the encoding, the DLSS, the ray tracing, path tracing, editing and software stuff, if you want to stay in an Nvidia's system, or you know, this card does have some value and probably a good pickup, and it isn't overly overpriced, but I would say that it probably should go down a little bit more to become a great proposition. And on to the last things, then we're gonna take a look at the ranking. As I told you before, the 5060 does look the best on paper. Then the difference becomes, you know, around 8% for the next 5 cards. The 9070 XT does go up a ranking here, and is closely following the 16 GB version of the 9060 XT. The argument, as I said before, that that card is probably the best overall card in this generation. Looks to be the same in UK here as well. It is climbing. You never know, if it goes down just a bit more in its MSRP, it's probably going to be a better proposition than a 16 GB 9060 XT. That's that in the UK. 9070 XT is probably the best one here, but it is closely followed by the 5070 and the non-XT version here. So it is close in the mid-range here, in the mid-table. It isn't separating much, but you know, slight change in pricing and one card just bumps up 2, 3, 4 places. So be aware of that. The pricing can always change. I'm not gonna add so much, but the 5090 is just a horrible value currently. It is what it is, albeit this number here is a bit wrong. It shouldn't be 1466. And finally, we have the US market. Here it's going to be a little bit different because US doesn't have taxes included in their pricing. So when we get to the MSRP in US, there will be a bit of a different discussion and a way how we look at the graphs. But starting off with the pricing, it is quite simple to look at it. It's very easy because it follows the MSRP the Nvidia and AMD has set for their cards. So 5050 is 250, 5060 is 290, and so forth, right? Most of these cards will hover around their MSRP or the launch price in US, but some of them have gone down a bit in pricing, some have gone up. Performance wise, if we're looking at the price to performance, no surprise here, right? The 9060 XT 8GB is the best price to performance card, followed by the 5060, but here the gap is a little bit bigger. The 5060 is closely then followed by the 5060 Ti 8GB model. So those are the three best cards here. The 5050 is quite poorly price to performance ranked here. That's probably because it hasn't changed its price. It's the same as the launch price and nobody's buying those cards, so there's no reason really for anyone to just look at the 5050, not even the seller, the like sellers, to even lower it, because nobody's going to even buy it even at a lower price, because people will get the 5060 anyways. In this case, the difference in between, in the middle with everyone, is small differences. You can see that the 9070 XT is pretty much on par as the fifth best price to performance card. In US, it is actually going up one place as well, compared to UK and then compared to Germany. So this card just gets better and better in rankings, price to performance, for each country we go through. But the differences are negligible in this case. 5070 Ti still, in a top spot, because it is still quite pricey compared to the 9070 XT, and the 5080 and 5090 are in their own leagues price to performance wise. Now the most interesting part with the US, right, and MSRP, and looking at it, how well they're priced currently. Is their price lower or higher than MSRP? Is it correctly priced and so forth? In US, we don't have tax, or US has tax, but each state has its own. So some states have 0, some have 5, 6, 4, 7, some have 10, 12, 30. You gotta be careful in which state you live in to apply the correct amount of tax you'll be paying as well. So it's harder to calculate the exact MSRP to price value here, but just going off MSRP, and then the price that is currently in stores, we see that the 5060 Ti and the 9060 XT are the best priced cards. They are below their MSRP. They are quite fairly priced, I would say, but still, for an 8GB card, paying almost $350 USD is quite a lot, especially when there's a 16GB for only 20 more. That will perform pretty much around the same, but you have that 16GB VRAM protection. Other cards in the US, it is a little bit more boring graph, because most of these cards, as you can see, they're pretty much following the MSRP. They are priced at the MSRP of their card. So the 5090 is still above its MSRP. You probably aren't going to find it below, around its MSRP, because mostly it is out of stock. I did see on PC Part Picker that there was a listing for $1,999 for a 5090, but it also said out of stock. Most likely all of these MSRP cards for the 5090 are out of stock, so you are paying a premium currently. 5090 has gone down to its MSRP, but it's still a card that shouldn't be more than 900 USD, so just a poorly valued card overall, and we all know it isn't a great card generally. Lastly, we have the rankings. Almost follow the same suit as previous countries, UK and Germany. 9060 XT is the best. Again, it is generally probably the best card price to performance, but then you add the context, it is an 8GB card, so you are a bit screwed there. 5060 does perform quite well price to performance wise, but we see that this time the difference here is about 16%. So there's quite a big difference between the 9060 XT and the next best value in the 5060. It is closer with the 5060 Ti 8GB, and then the 5050, and then 9060 XT and 9070 XT. Those are quite close there in the rankings. Once again, the 9070 XT is technically in 5th place, the same place as the 9060 XT is 16GB. So it is climbing. It is climbing in the rankings. It started off as 8th best card, I believe, in the Germany, then 7th in UK, and now it is 6th. I don't remember. I'm sorry, but 970 XT just still beats everyone, and it just shows that AMD has done a great job with this card, how they priced it, and how well it is just performing. It is just shy of performance of the 5070 Ti, but it is priced usually around 150 euros, pounds, or dollars below. So you're just getting a much better card generally. There's not much more to say, you know, classically 5090 and 5080 are the worst price to performance. If you were to do a ranking of the best GPUs this generations, 5090 probably wouldn't be the last one because it is just a beast of a card. So you would have to like put it up in the at least mid-table, because it is actually a great card technically because of what it offers, the VRAM, the performance, the AI stuff. It is just a beast. So just because it is sitting in 12th position on my list of price to performance, it is more of a ranking based on numbers and not so much on actually the whole context and the package of it. Because I think most of YouTubers or people in the space would say the 9070 XT probably is like in the top 3 best cards produced this generation, if not second best or first, besides the 9060 XT 16GB, and maybe followed by the 5070 Ti or 5090. That's how it is looking at the US market. A very interesting stuff we can also look at in the US is, because eBay is much easily looked at in US, we can actually see, I actually have here a graph that shows all the last 3 generations of GPUs. So we can actually compare the pricing with the used cards, right? Like for example, like a 3090 or 3080 or 7800 XT, or like we can see how much they are usually selling for on eBay or Java. We can actually, if you were to buy a new PC or building a new PC, you can actually see if there's some used cards that might be better and fit into your budget better than the new cards. And on this graph, the RX 6600 is quite a great deal here, because I found it as low as $50, which is just a generous offer for a GPU. Some other cards, 6600 XT is quite well, and which is surprisingly the 6800 XT with the 16GB VRAM is probably my pick of the best GPU to buy now if you were to build a new PC or you need an upgrade, but you don't have a limited budget or you don't have the money to spend on the newest graphics card. That card is great. Only downside is FSR 3 or 4. I don't believe that card can utilize. Future Maestro here, RX 6800 XT can actually utilize FSR 3 and has recently been seen utilizing the FSR 4 by some modding used by Optiscaler. Otherwise, the card raw performance and the Gigabyte VRAM you get is amazing for the price. It's probably looking at around, let's see, $240 I've seen a listing for that card, which is just absurd. Listed as low as $240, which it is priced below the like 9060 XTs or 5060 Ti's, but it performs better in raw performance, of course. The only modern graphics card, or modern, more like the newest and the latest GPUs, the 9060 XT 8GB is the only one that is in the top 15 best price to performance cards here, but it's the 8GB version. Just being on the 12th position is quite bad for an 8GB version card, since the 6800 XT or even the 6800, the normal version, those are much better values. The used market in the USA is very interesting. There's a lot of deals there you can always find if you are limited on the budget, or you don't have money for the newest graphics card, or just looking to side upgrade, or building a new PC on a limited budget, or just for a friend, or giving away a PC or something like that. You can see that the useless card now it is 4 years old or 5 years old. So yeah, it is running in its, you know, life cycle. It is slowing down. Out of all the graphics card I have collected here of the last 3 generations, it is still in the, you know, mid-table performance wise. It can still place 1440p most games because of that VRAM. So that's quite good, but gonna be a problem down the line. We've gone through a lot of different markets. Germany and UK and USA, it's been very interesting to look at and compare different how they perform. But as we can see that most cards here do rank similarly in the countries. Mostly it is just 2 cards that interchange constantly. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe.